Hi, it's me again, Ray, from the Radio Workshop. I'm back again with another pirate radio story from the 1960s, early 70s. Also got my coffee. Look at it. Look, it's 6:30 in the morning. I'm up early. I was thinking about this in bed, and I thought I'm going to go and get started on this video. So here I am. Several people have said to me, why didn't you pirate on FM? I mean, let's get this straight from the start. I don't pirate. I never did pirate. I'm just telling you about other people. Why didn't other people pirate on the VHF FM band? Band 2, we call that in the UK. I'm not sure whether that applies abroad. The Band 2 FM band. Several reasons, really. First of all, VHF is very easy to track down. Get yourself a Yagi aerial, and you can point it, oh look, it's coming from that way. Whereas on medium wave, oh by the way, this is a nice radio I've just restored, Invicta Model 15, look at that. Long, medium and short wave. Talking of medium wave. So yeah, first of all, it's very easy to track down an FM station. That's the biggest problem with it. But there are other reasons. Back in the good old days, when I was a boy, there were transistor radios around, obviously. Now you might think this is funny. This is a transistor radio for those of you that don't know what one is. You might say, what's he talking about? And it works.
Mike Costello, thank you so much.
Very well. The reason I'm saying this is a transistor radio, because any youngsters watching this might not know what this is. There aren't any around these days, or very few. There aren't any around. In fact, a youngster recently said to me, what was he, 12, 13, sort of friend of a family member. I was talking about transistor radios, and he said, what's that? Do you mean a DAB radio? I said, well, no, I mean an old-fashioned transistor radio. And he didn't know. So there we are. Let's turn this down. Look, it's shouting about football now. So what people used to do back in those days, they'd tune around medium wave to see if they could find any, decent music or whatever to listen to. Very few people tuned around the VHF band, FM. A lot of the radios, like this one, it's got FM. The thing is, in the 60s, the only thing on FM in the UK, in this country, was the BBC Home Service, the third programme, which was classical. What else was on there? And the light programme. That was it. You also, right in the middle of the FM band, would you believe, were police transmissions. They were on AM, but they were transmitting in the middle of the VHF FM band, and you could tune in. If you just sort of tune off slightly, you could hear the police. So, first of all, pirates didn't really want to transmit very close to the police. Secondly, no one tuned around FM. Housewives, for example, if they listened to the light programme, it would be on the light programme all the time. They wouldn't change it. They wouldn't go to radio, Home Service or the third programme. So medium wave is where people tuned around. Okay, what would happen? Everyone in those days had a transistor radio in the kitchen. Teenage kids might have one in the bedroom, one each. There might be one in the lounge or dining room. There were, most houses, from what I recall anyway, would have at least 2 or 3 transistor radios. Okay, so the one in the kitchen, the housewife, I'm not sounding sexist, but that's the way it was in those days. She would have sort of the light programme on for light entertainment. Jimmy Young and all that. What's the recipe today, Jim, and all that. Do you remember that? If you do, you're old like me. Happy days. The father, the husband, he might have the Home Service tuned onto a radio in the dining room. So it wasn't so much that they tuned around so much, but the teenagers did. They come into the kitchen and they tune into, I don't know, whatever, some pirates, Radio Caroline, Radio London, and they tune around. So the radios were sort of tuned around. And you come across pirate stations. And another thing about medium wave, I remember our local paper, it used to put things in about pirate stations. And I remember once it said, this Sunday 11 o'clock on whatever it was, 192 metres or whatever, there's a pirate station called XYZ coming on the air. And of course everyone tuned in, 11 o'clock, here we go, look, and there it was. So the local paper, I don't know what their sort of stance was on it, but there were a lot of references to pirate radio stations, local ones, and they sort of almost advertised they did advertise the fact. So that's why we did. There were people that did try FM. I remember one chap, he built a beautiful transmitter, FM stereo transmitter, and he tried it out and it worked really well. But he did, he went on a few Sundays. He didn't get any listeners. There was no feedback from anyone. So that was that. So where do you put your medium wave transmitter where it's not going to get found? Before I told you about the pram, the girl with the pram. Do you remember that video? The chap in the boat, the little rowing boat off the coast here, south coast of the UK. But, the pram was good. In fact, I've got another recollection of the transmitter in the pram. I'll tell you that later, or in another video. Okay, the woods. The woods were a good place because you didn't get kind of a lot of people around, and if the GPO guys had tracked it down to the woods, you'd hear them coming. They're tramping through the woods, twigs cracking underfoot and all that. All the skullduggery going on in the bushes with us lot. I mean, not me, that lot, the pirates. So the plan was to dig a hole. So what they did was dig a hole in the ground, a good size hole like that. A bit of cardboard, hardboard, whatever it was, over the top, and kick a load of leaves and twigs over the top of that. Now, when we dug the hole, we got rid of the earth. We didn't sort of pile it up next to the hole, but make it obvious. We took it away and sprinkled it in the woods wherever. So we ended up with this hole in the ground. Okay, and what we did, we didn't have a plastic box in those days. Put a wooden box in it with some polythene in to keep the damp out. Okay, and the transmitter went in this hole. Now in there was the car battery, fully charged, of course. Same setup as we had in the pram and on the boat and all that. So the only thing coming out of the hole, like you set your transmitter up, you turn the cassette tape recorder on, it's transmitting, is the aerial wire. So the aerial wire goes up the tree and then along wherever. I've talked about aerials before in the woods. In fact, back in those days, I think all the woods around my hometown, full of bits of wire. There were earth systems and earth stakes and aerial wires. Virtually anywhere in the woods you look up, you can bits of wire hanging from trees. So that was the plan, and the tapes were pre-recorded, the little cassette tapes. It was a Philips cassette tape recorder, quite expensive back in the 60s, early 70s. Nice little bit of kit. They were expensive. So it's all set up in the hole under the ground, with a bit of hardboard over the top, leaves and twigs kicked all over it, no sign of anything. Now this hole wasn't kind of in the middle of a clearing or anything like that, it was just sort of under some bushes out of the way. We didn't want it kind of in the middle next to the pathway or anything, because there were one or two people walking dogs. Everyone smoked in those days. I've long since given up, but everyone smoked back in those days. And what we also were aware of, not having a load of fag ends, on the ground, all around where the hole was, because that's going to be a giveaway. So if anyone did have a cigarette, we had a tin, a drinks tin thing, and put the cigarette ends in there. Oh dear, so many memories. It was great fun. So that's how it was all set up. I said the only thing coming out of the hole was the aerial wire, which just went under the side of the hardboard. There was also a switch just in there, which turned the battery off, so everything was cut. The supply to the cassette tape recorder, everything was cut. So if there was any trouble, if the GPO guys were coming or whatever, all we had to do was move the hardboard aside, flick the switch off, pull the aerial wire down. All right, we didn't tie it or fix it in the trees. Pull it down, stuff it in the hole, hardboard's back. All this took a few minutes, if that. Kick the leaves over the hole and then just sort of wander off. And it was a great idea, because we also had lookouts. Now bear in mind, in those days you didn't have a mobile phone. We couldn't have a chap near the road give us a ring, say, right, they've arrived in their van, switch off. there was a system we have where people would make sort of bird calls and things. I can't do that, but you'd hear sort of or dogs or whatever. It sounded more like a dog than a bird call, but that was the sign that the GPO had arrived in their van. I remember one chap had an old school bell, and that was a bit of a giveaway. You know, in the woods, or ding, 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 the school bell, like playtime's over. I suppose that would have been appropriate. Playtime was over. Turn the transmitter off. Yeah, I've just made another coffee. I remember one GPO bloke said to me, he said, "What you're doing is all perfectly, well, not me, what the others are doing is all perfectly harmless and not causing interference. I mean, our transmitter was, 10 or 15 watts. We didn't go much more than that because the whole thing was run from a car battery and a transistor inverter for HT. You know, you couldn't have a high power transmitter, not with a car battery. You'd need more than that. You'd need a generator." Yeah, he said, it's perfectly harmless. You're not causing interference. He said, but the only thing is, it's illegal. He said, that's where I come in. Yeah, which it was illegal. I know that. So yes, so that was the setup. The transmitter, what was it? 2 or 3 Sundays, it was fine. No one turned up. This was usually the case. And then one Sunday, we heard the bird calls and all that. I think there were more than bird calls, all sorts of noises going on. A car horn going, you know, which meant that the GPO van had arrived. So, main switch off, aerial down from the tree under the bit of hardboard, put it over the hole properly, cover it all up, make sure nothing's left there, and we wandered off. I forget how many of us there were. None of us had a dog. Someone said it would be good to have a dog because that would look innocent. I mean, we couldn't have looked innocent anyway. You know, we were sort of long-haired hippies, and you don't look innocent, do you? Anyway, and we're walking through back to where the cars were parked on this sort of lane on the road, and there's this couple of GPO blokes walking towards us. They got a transistor radio with them. They got their DF gear in the van, but they knew it had gone off the air. But they sort of come into the woods and have a look, and they're sort of walking towards us. They know who, you know, they recognise us. We recognise them, and we're sort of walking past them, saying, "Morning, nice day for a walk." And I mean, I don't know whether they were seething or what, but they knew that, you know, they wouldn't find anything. They knew that, or that we weren't carrying anything, so they did carry on. We hung around by the roadway. It must have been getting on for an hour. So they were probably walking around looking for aerials and stuff. But of course they didn't find our transmitter. I've just found a newspaper cutting. There it is. Something about pirate radio stations down on the coast here in Horsham, which is 15 miles north of us, of where I am. I don't know whether I've got any more. I just found this in a collection of stuff I got on the computer and some photos. Don't have photos, unfortunately, of transmitters and things. I have asked around a few old friends, and no one's got anything. Nothing worth having anyway. So that's a shame. But as I've said earlier, the local paper used to kind of follow the pirate stations, and they print anything in there, as long as it was, the pirate stations were illegal, but what they printed was legal. That was the news. There's a pirate station. So very, very good fun. Happy days indeed. If you look at the bottom paragraph again of that newspaper cutting, what was it? The one's transmitted from a moving car, and the other from a houseboat in Shoreham Harbour. And the GPO, what's it say? I can't remember what it said now. Making efforts to track them down or something. Yeah, they did used to make efforts. They'd wander around the woods with a transistor radio, or down the beach that time when we had the chap had the boat out there. So it was, as I've said before, it was cat and mouse, and it was good fun. One friend of mine went to court. I forget, he was fined £30, I think. And the GPO stance was, it's interfering with aircraft communication, and it could cause a plane crash, which wasn't true. This was actually on shortwave, on 6.6 megs, Echo Charlie as it was known, as it's still known. There's still people transmitting there. Was it 6670 kcs? Yeah, 6.67 megs. Single sideband these days, of course, but that's still going strong. So yeah, I mean, you did get people that were caught and taken to court, but it's only a minimal fine. The worst thing was the equipment was confiscated. Just going back to the video I made about the transmitter and the pram, with the covers over it like a baby and the girl pushing the pram in the park. We actually tried that transmitter at night after the pub closed. It must have been about midnight. And we got some, because the propagation at night on medium wave is very good. Your signals go up off the ionosphere and down. And we had reports from Scotland and various other places in the park at midnight with a pram and a transmitter in it. Goodness me, that was quite a funny one. I won't do that in this video though, because it'll get too long and you'll all be dozing off because you're bored. So I shall save that one for another video. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I shall see you all again in the near future, no doubt. Bye bye for now.